All right, we'll say good morning. Let us begin. Begin by thanking our sponsors, to thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Nisan, to thank Czinn Teri Kahn Czinn for dedicating all the Shimmy Batsheva in honor of the birth of their grandson, Adin Tzvi Hochbaum, to thank Benjamin and Elys Wohl for dedicating all the shiurim this month in honor of all those who make the shiurim and drashos accessible beyond the confines of the Beis Midrash, specifically Moishe, Abramson, and Lasson, to thank Shimmy Batsheva Messing for dedicating this month in honor of the Bas Mitzva of their daughter Lilah, and to thank Paul and Kathy Pollack for dedicating the shiurim and drashos in memory of Paul's parents, Shmuel ben Zechariah, Lilah bas Avram, and his great-grandmother Cyril bas Rabdov. So with that, let us begin. A lot to do today. So we are picking up today's daf is daf Dalid. We are picking up Emes Hashem at the Gemara on daf Gimel Amud Beis. So remember again, the Mishnah said in the mashkinin es hakatan. So we do not seize collateral for the machzis hashekel of a katan. So again, we're actually going to discuss this idea a little bit more in the next Mishnah as well. But we'll say in general, again, the Mishnah is going to be bothered. Well, let's see. So the Gemara says halit tovin. So interestingly enough, the Mishnah says you don't seize collateral from a katan for the machzis hashekel, but it does sound like you would go ahead and say that the katan is obligated to give machzis hashekel, which is very interesting because a katan is a katan, right? And bepashtus, again, a child is not obligated in machzis hashekel, to which the Gemara says, Hada de temar b'shehevi shtei saras. No. When do we say that ultimately we collect the machzis hashekel from a katan? That's only a katan who has two heirs, right? Who again exhibited signs of physical maturation, who's effectively treated like a gadol in many respects. Aval lo hevi beisaras lo bada, but halacha lemaisa, if the katan has not exhibited signs of physical maturation, we would not even try to collect machzis hashekel from him. Ulamashkin in mashkin. I both say here, this is very important. On the left-hand margin, there is something called hagos hagra. So the gra, the Vilna Gaon, has certain emendations over here on the Gemara. So this is actually a very important one. He writes, you see by that aleph. That's the aleph in the Gemara, refers you to the left-hand margin. Sarach lomar. We don't collateralize, in other words, we don't seize collateral from machzis hashekel until a person reaches the age of 20. So I will say, well, we just learned over here something very interesting. So number one, a katan doesn't have to give machzis hashekel. Now, the father can give machzis hashekel on behalf of his son if he so chooses. Once a boy reaches the age of physical maturation, right? Again, physical maturation, then halacha l'maisa, he's supposed to give machzis hashekel, but we will not seize collateral. The only time we begin to seize collateral for the collection of machzis hashekel is when the young man reaches the age of 20. Good, that's how the Gemara is. We'll say, skip the parentheses. Kini mas nisin, again the Mishnah supports this. I'm sorry, kini mas nisin. Furthermore, we learned in the Mishnah, so we'll say, furthermore, we don't seize collateral from Kohanim, alt derech akavad, because it's not respectful to seize collateral from the Kohanim. Now, both say, if you take a look at the Tiklin Chadatin for just a moment, it's actually very, you see the Tiklin Chadatin, both say, and the staff is on the bottom of the page, the bottom left. Nami lo lemashkino de gabayu matzino gamkin shenu chakam neidar keshalom afilu nachrim. So you skip a little bit. Avad mitnei covered matzino shchoklum covered. So we'll say what the Gemara is pointing out over here is as follows: that halacha lemaisa. You see, there's different girsos. Some say we don't go ahead and seize collateral from the Kohanim mipnei darkei shalom. So the Gemara now is saying it can't be about shalom. Why isn't it about shalom? Because we'll say if it was about shalom, that applies to every person. The reason we don't seize collateral from the Kohanim is alt kavod. There's a certain level of kavod that is due to the Kohanim. Therefore, we won't seize collateral from them for machzis hashekel. Rabbi Yehuda Hayid. So we'll say, remember again. Now we had in the Mishnah an interesting machlokas. What was the machlokas? Are Kohanim obligated in machzis hashekel or not? So Rabbi Yehuda said that kol kohen sheshokel eino chote, that if a kohen gives machzis hashekel, he's not sinning. Which Rabbi say tells you what is a kohen obligated? Is a kohen obligated? No. What it's saying is he's not obligated, but if he does so, he's not doing anything wrong. Versus the position of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who said that Allah Lamaisa, any coin who does not give machzis shekel is chote, which means the coin is obligated for machzis shekel. So fundamental machlokes. So let's analyze. Amr Brachia, time to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's logic is the pasuk says as follows: Ze yitnu. But say interestingly enough, the numerical value, the gematria of Ze is 12. Yud Beis Shvatim Yitnu, which tells you all 12 tribes have to go ahead and give machzis shekel. Reb Tavi b'Shem Rab Hamnuna, Kein Mashivin Chachamim Rabbi Huda. This is how the Chacham responds to Rabbi Huda. This is the argument they make. Chatos Yachid Mesa. Both say the chatos of an individual is left to die. Ein chatos tzibor Mesa, but the chatos of a tzibor is never left to die. Minchas hayachid kreva kalil. The mincha of an individual is totally offered up. Ve'in minchas tzibor kreva kalil. But the mincha of a tzibor is never offered up. Now both say, we're going to see exactly what this means. But just interestingly enough, if a normal, I think I spoke about this yesterday a little bit, when normally a coin offers up a karma mincha, let's say on behalf of someone else, on behalf of the tzibor, so the coin offers up the kamitza, right, which is the 3 fingerfuls, and everything else is consumed. However, again, when the coin offers up his own mincha, that mincha is totally consumed on the mizbeach. If I'll say what's happening over here is as follows: the school of thought that says that a coin should not give the machzis shekel is because we'll say, what does machzis shekel? Remember again, what's the point of machzis shekel? What does machzis shekel do for you? When you contribute machzis shekel, what does that do for you? Right? It gives you a portion in all offerings. Interestingly enough, while for us that sounds beautiful, for the Kohanim, it could potentially cause a problem. What's the potential problem? You see, able to say, we see that any time a coin offers up a carbon, pretty much, it's fully consumed on the mizbeach, which would then potentially mean, if you take that to the logical extension, if a coin gives machzis shekel and he has a partial ownership, therefore in communal offerings, so perhaps that means that every single offering has to be fully consumed and not fully consumed by the fire, fully offered up on the fire, and nothing is consumed. That's the tension over here. The Kasha in the Gemara says, but one second, what you just said, do you bring a question for based on something that a person does not agree with? Because after Rabbi Yehuda holds a little bit differently. This nan, she'in chatos tzibor mesa, right? In general, both say we hold that the chatos of a tzibor is never left to die. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Tamos, Rabbi Yehuda says, yes, it is. So, v'hu mos sivlon, lo nidavas yachitu, v'inon masivan like keben shenimsra letzibor, kimoshin nidavas tzibor. And Rabbi Yehuda holds that the problem with the Kohen offering of the machzis hashekel is that halacha lamaiseh still retains some ownership over it. If there's ownership in communal offerings, that could pose a problem vis-a-vis the Kohen. However, the Gemara says, on the other hand, the other school of thought says, keven shenimsra letzibor, kimoshin nidavas tzibor. Others say, no. Once the coin offers up, the machzis shekel, that is given over to the tzibor, and personal ownership is relinquished. So the Gemara says, "Ksev kala over ala pekudim." So the pasuk says, anyone who, now this time again, who is obligated in machzis shekel? So one pasuk says, "Kala over ala pekudim." Whoever passes by. Pekudim literally are the census takers or the counters. Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Nechemya Chad Amar Kol Da'avid Biyama Yitain. So we'll say one opinion says, who gives machzis shekel? Anyone who passed through the Red Sea. If you pass through the Red Sea, if you pass through Yam Suf, you have to give machzis shekel. The Charna is the name of another Tana. The Charna Amar Kol Da'avid Al Pikudaya Yitain. Charna says no. Whoever's counted has to give. Now we'll say, what's the nafkamina between those two opinions? Shevet Levi, right? Shevet Levi wasn't counted. Although interestingly enough, the only machlokes of Rabbi say is by Kohanim. Everyone is agreeing that Leviim give. Okay, so the Gemara says, is it whoever passed through the sea or whoever was counted? Man dharma called David biyama yitain nisei Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. So the one who says that whoever passed through the Yam Suf has to give machzis shekel, that's a part of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, because that would include Kohanim. However, man dharma called David al pikudaya yitain nisei ben Bukhari. But the one who says that whoever's counted has to give, that would support the position of Rabbi Huda ben Bukhari, who holds that Kohanim are exempt. So we'll say, halacha l'maisa, how do we paskin? Who has to give machzis shekel? So we'll say, so here we go. The Rambam the Rambam in Hilchos Shekalim. There is Hilchos Shekalim, which is not in Zmanim of Rambam. In Parak Aleph Halacha Zayin says, we'll say, here we go. But we'll say, I meant to mention, if anyone, there are notebooks for Shekalim. If anyone wants a Shekalim notebook, they're right up here. So the Mishnah, so the Rambam says as follows: Hakol Chayavim Lite Machzas HaShekel. Everyone is obligated to give Machzas HaShekel. Kohanim, Leviim, Yisraelim, Gerim, Avodim, Mishuchrarim. So we'll say, Avodim Mishuchrarim. So we'll say, so again, for our purposes, Kohanim are obligated. Halacha L'maisa, we paskin like Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, that even Kohanim are obligated to give Machzas HaShekel, which therefore, I will say, tells us that interestingly enough, the way we dash in the pasuk, Kala over ala pekudim, ultimately again teaches us whoever went through Yam Suf is obligated in Machzas HaShekel. Kohanim passed through Yam Suf, and therefore halacha l'maisa they are obligated in Machzas HaShekel as well. I'll say that is the halacha. We'll talk about the exemptions. The Rambam writes over here, Avalo Noshim, women aren't obligated. Ketanim, again, we'll get into that more. We'll say, here we go, Mishnah. Halacha Dalid. Mishnah. Even though we said before that you don't seize collateral from women, from servants, and from ketanim. So we'll say, which means, if we're not seizing collateral, what does that effectively mean? What does it mean? It means you're not chayiv. So as you just said before, women, avodim ketanim, are not chayiv in Machzas HaShekel. However, nevertheless, if they want to give, we of course will accept the donation. Hanochri v'akusi sheshaklo. Listen to this. What about a guy? Right? Nochri is a Gentile. Kusim. I both say we see Kusim throughout our journey in Shas. Remember again, Kusim were a group of people who came from the country of Kusa, and they were resettled in Eretz Yisrael during the exile of the 10 tribes. They were resettled in Eretz Yisrael by Shalmaneser, the king of Ashur. They're living in Eretz Yisrael, minding their own business, worshipping idolatry. There's an outbreak of lions. They convert in order to stop the outbreak of lions. So there is a machlokes in the Gemara about are they geirei Emes or geirei Achrayus. I both say geirei Achrayus, not with an ayin but with an aleph, like Ari lion. Did they really genuinely convert, or did they just convert to stop the lion? So we'll say we see this. I would venture to say there's not a masechta where we don't see kusim. They're everywhere. They're mamish everywhere. Right? So not a masechta where we don't see them come up somewhere. Right? And again, there's always this tension. Are they Jews? Are they not the Jews? So here we go. So the Mishnah says, when it comes to Machzas HaShekel, Nachri the Kusi Sheshiklu in Mekavlin. If a Nachri and a Kusi give Machzas HaShekel, we don't accept it. Man, ve'im Mekavlin miyadam kanizav and kanizavas, the kaniyoldos, and vikinim. Sorry, we don't accept from them, we'll say, different bird offerings either. For zavim, for zavos, for yoldos, vichatos v'ashamos, or a chatas or an asham. What will we accept from a Nachri and a Kusi? Ze'aklal, kol she'nidar v'nidar mekabel miyadan, kol she'no nidar v'nidar ein mekabel miyadan. We'll say, here's the halacha. For both a Nachri as well as a Kusi, we will accept any vowed or donative offering. What we won't accept is any obligatory offering. So for example, a Nachri or a Kusi could bring a neder or a nedava. That they can do. What they can't do is bring a chatas, an asham, all of these bird offerings for zav, for zava, for yoledes, that we don't accept. V'chein b'furash ayde Ezra. And both say this is incredible because Ezra said this, rebuilding the second Beis Midrash. Shneimar, Lo lachem v'lano livnos beis Elokeinu. It is not for you and for us to rebuild the house of God. I will say this is incredible, and by the way, it like flies in the face of every single fundraising strategy, which is to say no to donations. But yet again, Ezra said to the Gentiles who wanted to contribute to the Beis Midrash, "Thank you so much, but no thank you." But no, thank you. We're going to see Ezra's strategy was as follows, and this is really incredible. Ezra's strategy was, he was concerned to take donations from non-Jews because he was concerned that if the Jews see the non-Jews giving, then what's going to happen? Well, I'll say in general, what happens when you see someone else giving? Oh, they've got it. They've got this, right? They've got, in general, the Gemara says that a pot that belongs, right? Keder de beishutfi, lo chamimi v'lo kariri, right? The pot that belongs to two people, it's never hot and it's never cold, because one person always assumes the other person is just taking care of it. So Ezra felt that if the Jews have to take ownership, I will say, sometimes in life, if you want to get something done, you have to own it. And the way to own it is to own it. and to do it. So Ezra said, I don't want anyone else participating in this. This is Jewish people's endeavor. They have to get the job done. Top of Dalit. Now, Abosai, the Mishnah is introducing us to the concept of kalbon. Kalbon, Abosai said, is an additional payment, which said that in addition to the machzas hashekel, you had to give another little extra. The little extra was essentially like another quarter of a shekel. So you have to give a kalbon. Now, both say, what was the logic for this? The logic for this was as follows. When you came, we already saw this reference a little bit in the previous Mishnah. Remember, you came, the shulchanos, the money changers set up shop. Because the goal was you had to give a maktis shekel coin, literally half a shekel coin. So we'll say, so you would come to the shulchan, you'd come to the money changer, take whatever currency you're using, and exchange it for maktis shekel. But a coin about, say, the maktis shekel, remember again, unlike today, right, where currency is just, paper. So remember, again, the maktis shekel was actually a coin of precious metal that had an inherent value. Well, what's the problem with coins? Is that over time they, what's the word? Erode, I guess. Like some of the actual precious metal content is gone. So in order to ensure that everyone was giving the full value of maktis shekel, essentially the Mishnah added on like a supplemental, just mini payment called kalbon, a mini payment. So watch this. Ve'elush chavim kalbon. Well, so these are the people who have to give the kalbon. Leviim Yisraelim Gerim Avadim Mishuchrarim Avo Lo Kohanim V'Noshim V'Avadim Uktanim. So we'll say, so there are people who have to give the kalbon, people who don't have to give the kalbon. Again, we'll discuss why some have to give and why some don't have to give. The Gemara says, Shoka Aide, Coin Aide, Isha Aide, Eved Aide, Cotton Potter. Similarly, if you give a maktis shekel on behalf of a coin, on behalf of a woman, an Eved, a cotton, you don't have to give the kalbon. Vim Shakal Al Yodov Aide Chavero. But let's say you're giving, now we'll say, so we're going to see as follows. Let's say I'm giving a full shekel. I'm giving on behalf of myself and my friend. So what's the halacha? Chayiv kalbon echad. You only have to give one kalbon on that. Rabbi Meir says, base kalbanos. No, you have to give two kalbanos. Hanosi in sela v'notel shekel. But we'll say, what happens if halacha l'maisa, let's say you get change. You give a sela. Now, we'll say, a sela is worth 2 shekalim. It's worth 2 shekalim. So a person gives a sela. Hanosi in sela v'notel shekel. So let's say now you give a sela to the Beis Midrash, you get back a shekel. Chayiv shnei kalbanos. Interestingly enough, you're going to be chayiv 2 kalbanos, which is fascinating. 1 kalban apparently, again, for the money you donated, and interestingly enough, another kalban on your change. So we're going to see why exactly you're getting taxed on the change you're getting back. Hashokal ayidei ani, if a person goes ahead and contributes a maktis shekel on behalf of a pauper, va'ayidei shchein on behalf of your neighbor, va'ayad ben iro, or somebody in your city, pater. Ultimately, again, you don't have to pay a kalbon on that. Vin hilvan, but if you lent it to them, chayer. We'll say, so we're going to see something very interesting. That essentially, when you're doing sometimes you pay on behalf of someone, but it's just a convenience thing. I've got a full shekel on me, or 2 shekalim, or a whole shekel. You don't have any money on you. Okay, no problem. I'll take care of your half shekel, I'll pay you back later. That's a halva. On a halva, the Mishnah says you have to pay a kalbon on both half shekels. However, if you're doing a tova for someone, but let's say again, you don't have to pay back. I'm just happy to help you out. If you're doing a chesed for someone, and therefore you're paying the maktis shekel on their behalf, you are not obligated to go ahead and pay a kalbon on that. Interesting. Ha'achna shutfin, say this is a fascinating case. Ha'achna shutfin shechayavim bekalbon p'turim ma'aser behema. Kashavim ma'aser behema p'turim min kalbon. Supposed to listen to this. So the Mishnah says, brothers who father died, they inherit an estate. So the Mishnah says, whenever they are chayiv in ma'aser behema, they're pater from kalbon. Whenever they're chayiv in kalbon, they're pater from ma'aser behema. So there is this reverse relationship between ma'aser behema and kalbon. We'll define exactly what that means in the Gemara. The kamihi kalbon, by the way, how much is a kalbon? So ma'a kesef, it is a ma'a of money, ma'a of silver. The Chum say no, chatzi ma'a, it is a half of ma'a. So we'll say, so just to give you an idea, a half of a ma'a would be a quarter of a sela. So the relationships that you need to know for this is a sela equals 2 shekel, and a ma'a equals a half a sela. So therefore, again, according to the Gemara over here, that the kalbon is a quarter of a sela. Okay, says Gemara. We'll say, let's analyze. Afa pisha amru habitva ein tovin. So we'll say, so remember again, the Mishnah said, even though we don't go ahead and seize collateral from children from maktis shekel, So we'll say, so once again, the Gemara makes the inference. So I understand you don't take collateral, but it sounds like that you're still going to go ahead and ask. Litwa means to ask, to go ahead and ask for the machzah shekel from a child. But yet we said before that children are pater. So the Gemara says, Hacha at amar tovin, v'hacha at amar in tovin. What's going on over here? Do we collect machzah shekel from children or not? To which the Gemara says, it's not a contradiction. So we'll say it's the shaila of physical maturation. If the boy has exhibited signs of physical maturation, we will tell him give machzah shekel, but we will not collateralize. We'll say as we saw before in the Gra explained that the progression is as follows: before 2 hairs, before beis sa'aros, we're asking for anything. Beis sa'aros, we ask him contribute machzah shekel, but we don't take collateral. Only once he reaches the age of 20 will we go ahead and take collateral. Incredible. Hanochri vakusi. So we'll say this is very interesting. So now remember, the Mishnah said that we do not go ahead and take machzah shekel from a nochri and from a kusi. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Ba, Tipater kiman damar kusi kinochri. So we'll say obviously our Mishnah reflects the view of the opinion who says that what? That a kusi is like a nochri, that a kusi is treated like a Gentile. To which the Gemara says, the ispalginon, or the ispalgin. Remember, this is the source of a machlokes. How do we treat a kusi? Kusi kinochin, to also here's the machlokes. Kusi kinochin divrei Rebbe. Rebbe holds that a kusi is treated like a nochri. Shimmy Batsheva kusi ki Yisrael chol davar. Wow, people say, what a machlokes? What a machlokes? So you have Rebbe saying a kusi is treated like a nochri. You have Shimmy Batsheva saying kusi is treated like a Jew. Mamish like a Jew. Amr Rabbi Lezer, masnisin benachrim, ha bekusim lo. So Rabbi Lezer wants to suggest that our Mishnah is only talking about nachrim. Really, kusim should not be part of the Mishnah. Why shouldn't kusim be part of the Mishnah? Because again, what Rabbi Lezer is going to say is that halacha l'maisa, everyone agrees that a nachri doesn't contribute machzah shekel. But because kusim are subject to machlokes, maybe it shouldn't be included in the Mishnah. V'tani, Kain Adam, L'Rabos Es Hagerim. So we'll say the pasuk over here that the Gemara is quoting is Dabra b'nei Yisrael v'Mart Aleim Adam ki yakriv mikem karban la'Hashem min ha'behemar min ha'bakar min ha'tzon t'kriv es karbanchem. So we'll say, so interestingly enough, what the Gemara is picking up on over here is as follows. The Torah, when it speaks about who could bring a karban, uses the Lasson of Adam. We'll say, now who does Adam refer to? Adam is one of the most generic terms, right? For people. So the Gemara says something very interesting. Vitani kain Adam l'Rabos es hagerim. So we'll say, so Adam comes to include not just natural born Jews, but converts as well. Mikem, from amongst you, is lahotzi es hamumrim, to exclude apikarsim. Right? We'll say, if somebody does not believe in the karbanos, somebody does not believe in Torah, ultimately, again, we won't accept a carbon from them. Masnisin pliga Rabbi Lazar. So ultimately, again, the Mishnah argues in Rabbi Lazar. Ein mekablen miyadam kani zavin v'zavos kani yoldos v'chiyesh kine zavin v'zavos benachrim. Suppose remember again when the Mishnah says that we don't accept kine zavim and zavos from nachrim. Why would you think we would? Rabbi say those halachos of zivos and the halachos of yoledes are a din by Jews. So why would you ever think that a Gentile would be bringing these karbanos? Ela reisha benachrim v'seifa b'kusim. Rather, what you have to say is the beginning of the Mishnah speaking about non-Jews, right? Namely, so when it comes to machzah shekel, we won't accept the machzah shekel from non-Jews, and the seifa, which speaks about again the kinim, the bird pairs, we won't the orchatas and asham. That not only will we not accept from nachrim, which is obvious, but we won't even accept it from mumrim, from apikarsim as well. So the Gemara says, Keinu reisha benachrim and seifa b'kusim. On Rabbi Yochanan says as follows, Betchila in mekablan mehem. So we'll say, interestingly enough, when we first begin to go ahead and build the Beis Hamikdash, we will not accept donations from non-Jews. Now we'll say, if you take a look at the Tiklin Chadatin, Tiklin Chadatin is all the way on the bottom of the page. Look in the left-hand column of the Tiklin Chadatin, second line down. On Rabbi Yochanan, Betchila, Betchilas habinyan dechayshinon shema l'rifyon heim miskavnin kidichsiv. So we'll say this is interesting. See what Rabbi Yochanan says is as follows. Here, we don't accept donations from non-Jews at the beginning process of the construction of the Beis Hamikdash. Why not? What are we concerned about? So I will say we're concerned that perhaps of two things. Number one, that Jews will become a little bit lazy in contributing. And number two, more than that, that the Gentiles may be trying to sabotage the project. Because by kind of creating the impression that they're taking financial responsibility for it, again, it's kind of one and the same thing. The Jews will back down a little bit. So if somebody else is taking care of it, we don't have to contribute towards this. And the job will end up not getting done. Therefore, Rabbi Yochanan says, based on Ezra, we do not accept Gentile donations for the beginning of the construction of the Beis HaMikdash. Incredible. So the Gemara says, Lo b'davar mesuyam, v'lo b'davar she'eino mesuyam. We don't accept donations. Both say davar mesuyam means something specific. So, for example, if the Gentile family wants to go ahead and donate whatever it is, the lobby, we won't accept specific donations, and we don't accept non-specific donations. Rabbi will say, once the project is kind of nearing its completion, then what? Then we accept donations. We accept donations. But Rabbi will say, interestingly enough, Rabbi Yochanan says, we won't accept specific donations, only generic donations. So, for example, the Gentile family would be precluded from donating a specific item in the Beis HaMikdash, but they could give a general donation. Reb Shimon Lakish Amar, Bein Mitchila Bein B'Sof Im Mekala Mehen Lo Davar Mesuyam Davar She'eino Mesuyam. Shimon Lakish says we don't accept donations at all. Right? Neither in the beginning of the construction, end of the construction, something specific, something non-specific. The Gemara says Masnisin Pliga Rabbi Yochanan. So the Mishnah ultimately argues on Rabbi Yochanan because after all the Mishnah said Im Mekala Mehen Hegdish Unedava. I'm sorry. Mishnah says Im Mekala Mehen Hegdish Unedava LeBedek Habayis. So Mishnah says we don't accept Hegdish or Unedava for Bedek Habayis. Passerlei Bein Mitchila Bein B'Sof. Or bilvad davar mesuyim. And the way we interpret that is that means you can't accept anything at the beginning or at the end when it is a specific, donation. In other words, we're both saying the logic behind that is we don't want the name of the Gentile specifically tethered to the Beis HaMikdash. It is our job to build the Beis HaMikdash. It is our job to dedicate a Beis HaMikdash. So therefore, again, the most you could do is at the end of the construction process, you could accept generic donations. But as a general approach, halacha l'maisa, you cannot go ahead and accept specific donations for specific items. Incredible. So we'll say, it's possible the way to interpret this is that ultimately, the Gemara is interpreting Mishnah is where a Gentile goes ahead and donates something specific at the beginning of the construction process. We can't even accept the money. And if the Gentile won't accept the money back, Yolichim liyam hamelach, we throw it into the Yam HaMelech. So we'll say really an incredible Gemara. And it just shows you again this is all based on Ezra, but what Ezra was trying to show is if you want to accomplish something in life, you must take full ownership over it. You cannot assume that other people are going to do anything, because if you rely on other people to do things, then more often than not, the things that are important to you don't get done. So Ezra said, obviously talking to the Klal, this is our Beis HaMikdash, this is our project, we must take financial ownership over it. The most we could do is at the end of the construction process, you could take non-specific donations. Shimon Lakish Omer, Bein Mitchila Bein B'Sof, Im Mekal Mehen Lo Davar Mesuyam. Masnisim Pli Yarab Shimon Lakish. So we'll say the Mishnah argues, Reish Lakish, Datani, Hakol Shavin, Sheinodrin Vinidarin. Because another Mishnah that says anyone could go ahead and donate a vowed offering. Now, we'll say Nidarin means could be the subject of a vow offering. Now, in general, when we say someone could be the subject of a vow offering, what that generally means is like this. If I go to Ruvain and I say, Ruvain, Erkichva Allah, your value is on me. So I've pledged now the value of Ruvain to the Beis HaMikdash. So that's how a person becomes the subject of a vow. So Pasrele Ola, he said it's referring to an Ola, that remember again we'll say that a non-Jew is permitted to go ahead and give an Ola, for example, as a neder or a nedava. Just can't give obligatory offerings. Necha, Nodrin Ola, Nidarin Ola, lo, we'll say, so that makes sense if you say that a Nachri has the ability to offer up an Ola. But what does it mean when you say that a Nachri has the ability to be the subject of an Ola? What does that mean? Ella, Kisha Amar Yisrael Harei Alai Ola, V'Shama Nachri V'Amar Masha Amar Ze Alai. So we'll say, what's the case? The case is where a Jew said, Harei Alai Ola, I hereby take upon myself to give an Ola, and the Nachri said, what he said, I'll take one of those also. Right? So we'll say, so that's where the Nachri kind of latches on to the donative opportunity of the Jew, where the Jew says, I'm giving it over. Nachri says, put me down for one of those also. That's what it means when it says nidarin, that he's the subject, so to speak, of the offering. Not literally that he's the subject, but once the Jew is speaking, the Nachri says, I'll do that also. Good. So we'll say, but however, the Nachri will not go ahead and bring Nisachim, right, together with his oldest, even though, again, and this is halacha l'maisa, right, that a Nachri can go ahead and bring any type of donated offering. He just can't bring anything obligatory. Now with the Mishnah, the Gemara just does this, qualifies that when the Nachri brings even his donated opportunity, he does not bring Nisachim. He does not bring libations along with that. Ayu Moser Nisachim, lo l'kli sharis inun. So we'll say, and now again, Moser Nisachim means, and the leftover kli sharis. Ultimately, again, don't they go ahead, the leftover Nisachim, what happens with them? Don't they go into the kli sharis? Nimsa, maybe davar mesuyam. It turns out then they will say that what? That Allah Kalamaisa, the Nachri will end up bringing something specific with his offering. Heisiv Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Bun, v'hataninan ne'erachin v'archin. I will say, but we learned that a Nachri has the ability to make an erech vow and be the subject of an erech vow. Lo lebedak habayis. Inun, is that not going to the bedak habayis? Hey, so to temple upkeep. Hey, ma'ada'at amar taman l'shamayim hu miskavein. So we'll say, what's the case? The case over here is where the Nachri is just simply donating. Once he's donating, the Gemara says we have the ability to channel his donation in whatever direction we so choose. So the Gemara says, Kain at Amar af hacha, so to over here by the Moser Nesachim. If there's any leftover Nesachim, Lashamayim hu miskavein, ume'eleyan amadeis, ume'eleyan hein boin. Good. So we'll say, so again, bottom line, what's coming out over here is that halacha l'maisa, the Nachri has the ability to offer up anything that is donated, or else he could donate that to a carbon. He does not bring libations along with his carbon. When it comes to donations to the Beis HaMikdash, we will not accept any specific donation. In other words, he can't dedicate the Beis HaMikdash lobby or any other specific part, but at the end of the construction process, we will halacha l'maisa accept general donations. Good Abba says, skip the brackets. So Shimon Lakish pasala, lo lachem v'lanu livnos l'beis Elokeinu. So Reish Lakish says, when the pasuk says lo lachem v'lanu, it is not for them, or not for you and for them, or lo lachem v'lanu, literally not for you and for us to build the house of God. Rabbi Chizkiah and Rabbi Simon shal me'ata ein mekabel mehen la'amasan l'chomos ha'ir o migdalosah. So we'll say, al shem v'lachem ein chelik. So we'll say, interestingly enough, Rabbi Chizkiah says, based on this, it's not just the pshat that we're not going to accept the donations of the Nachrim for the Beis HaMikdash, but bepashtos, what that also sounds like is, we're not going to accept the donations of the Nachrim for any type of vital resources. For example, la'amasana will say means as follows, that there was a channel of water that went through the Azar, that went through the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash, right? That water was there for cleaning purposes, that water was there for anything they needed water for. Chomos Seir means the walls of the city. So bepashtos, the Gemara is saying is that Ezra's injunction against accepting Gentile donations was not just a din in the actual construction of the Beis HaMikdash, but perhaps was a din in anything vital. Which I will say, it's such a powerful yesod, right? Because in the world of fundraising, we often assume that the mindset is what? Take as much from whoever. Right? If all the fundraising, take as much as, and what you see about say is that's not necessarily true. Because the idea that Ezra's trying to create over here is a sense of Achrayus. Because we'll say, remember again, what is Ezra contending with? We'll say, remember again, the deep dark secret of the Bayesheni was that the majority of Klal Yisrael did not come back, right? The majority of Klal Yisrael did not want the second Beis HaMikdash, did not want to come back to Eretz Yisrael. Intermarriage was at unparalleled levels. So Lamaisa, what you have over here is Ezra saying, listen, either we own this or we don't do it. Right? We could probably raise the money from other nations as well, but either we do this or we don't do this. It's such an incredible idea. So the Gemara goes weiter. So I will say, if you skip the brackets, from Tani to Da'amar Masnisa, because ultimately, again, the Mishnah says, what's the reason Rabbi Meir Da'amar Meir? Kashim Sheshiklo Torah, Kach Kolbono Torah. So I will say, so again, that effectively ends the sugya of the Nachrim. Now I will say, what I want to point out, remember, what was important for this sugya for us? Well, there's a number of things. First of all, what we accept from Nachrim, what we don't accept from Nachrim. No obligatory offerings from Nachrim, only donative. Is donative a word? Good. Only donative offerings from Nachrim do we accept. That's number one. When it comes to building a Beis Midrash, I will say this is very important because I don't know what's going to happen with the third Beis Midrash. However, we'll find out about whose donations are accepted, right? Who's going to be able to PayPal, right? The Beis Midrash. So that we'll have to see. But interestingly enough, if the second Beis Hamikdash is any model for that, then ultimately we will not accept from Nachrim, which is really incredible. At most, at the end of the process, we'll accept non-specific donations. So really quite incredible. But for our purposes, the part that is the burning question that we need to answer is, what about Kusim? Right? Remember again, the Mishnah quoted, the Gemara quoted this dramatic machlokes between Rebbe and Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. What is the status of a kusi? So you have Rebbe saying a kusi is like a nachri. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel saying a kusi is mamish like a Jew for every single purpose. So we'll say, so obviously the nafkamina is in many areas of halacha, but specifically here machzis hashakel. What's the halacha? So we'll say here the Rambam says about kusim shenachnu machzis hashakel ein mekablin mehen. We'll say halacha l'maisa. Rambam Paskins, we treat a kusi like a nachri, like a non-Jew, and therefore we do not accept machzis hashakel. We'll say, now again, to the point, I want you to understand something. It's not just that a kusi is not obligated, but rather, again, both a kusi and the nachri, we don't accept machzis hashakel from them. We don't accept, because also remember again, it makes a lot of sense. What's the whole point of machzis hashakel? What's the whole point? It gives you a chelik in communal sacrifices. Well, that's only for people who are supposed to have a chelik. Therefore, we won't accept from kusim, won't accept from nachrim. I will say, now what I'll tell you, we don't have time for it now, but what about a Yisrael mummer? This is a big one. What about a Jew who's in apikores? Do we accept machzis hashakel from such a person? You'll say for yourself, but it's not a kasha. Why isn't it a kasha? Because if he's in apikores, then what? He's not giving. So not true, Rabbi saying. Because at the end of the day, we all live with inconsistencies. And we know that Baruch Hashem, Ruchnius is not an all or nothing thing. It's not like the pshat that I say, well, I speak Lashon Hara. And by the way, not just recreationally, right? But I'm habitual. So you know what, if I'm already speaking Lashon Hara, such a terrible day, right? I don't put on tefillin. You know, forget it, the whole thing is gone. But so we all live with inconsistencies. So there are plenty of things that we do wrong, but yet it doesn't negate the things that we do right. So you could have, it's not a stira to say, you could have the Yisrael mummer who wants to go ahead. So I remember there was a guy who once, a number of years ago, this is probably going back, then we really have to finish. This is going back probably when I first came to Baltimore, who came to some I've had a box of matzah for him. Give him a box of matzah. So not a particularly, religious individual. And he told me that he eats chazer treif. Mamish eats chazer. But he said on Pesach, he's makbid not to eat chazer with bread. He only eats chazer with matzah. So you say to yourself, it's incredible. Mika, I'm not encouraging it, but you understand, it's Mika Amcha Yisrael. You say to yourself, really? God, enjoy your bread. It's not true. Because they'll say, if a Jew saves himself from the Isser Chametz, even if he's eating his chazer sandwich on matzah, his chazer brai, right? He's mamish eating chazer brai on Pesach. At the end of the day, Yisrael Kedoshim Heim. Every Jew wants Kedusha. Some of us have the ability to actualize it in totality, and some of us struggle with a lot of inconsistencies. But even the Yisrael Mummer wants to. So we'll say, anyway, that's the Rambam in Hilchos Ma'aseh Karbanos Parakima Halacha Dalbo. We'll have to say that for a different time. Let's finish. Matzis Rabbi Meir. So we'll say, remember again, the Mishnah like Rabbi Meir, the Amr Meir, Kishem Sheshak Lo Torah, Kach Kolbon Torah. So we'll say, remember again, now Kolbon. Remember again, we spoke about the surcharge that is attached to machzis hashekel, the surcharge. So Rabbi Meir says, the same way that there's a biblical obligation to machzis hashekel, kolbon is also a din da'oraisa. So the Gemara says, Kasav Rabbi Meir, benosein shiklo sholim shuchai bekalbon. So Rabbi Meir will say that halacha l'maisa, that when you give a full shekel, I must remember again, a full shekel is 2 half shekels. When you give a full shekel, you have to give 2 kolbons. Damar Meir, Kimin matmea shel eish hotzi HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitachas kisei kvodo, ve'her leMoshe, ve'amar lo zeh yitnu kazeh yitnu. Rabbi Meir holds that when it came to Machzas HaShekel, HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed Moshe Rabbeinu a fiery coin. He took out a fiery coin from underneath the kisei HaKavod, and ultimately he showed it to Moshe, and he said to Moshe Rabbeinu, zeh Yitnu, this is what you are supposed to give. Like this time, Master Shekel. So, the Tiklin Chadatin writes over here on the left-hand side. Taner America Yitnu, Svirle midekapid, Hashem ben El Kamim Mabaya Shalish, Bamalei Kazay Yitnu, Hainu Shalo Yugur Liolam. So, we'll say, interestingly enough, what Rabbi Meir is darshaning is as follows. The fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu went out of his way to show Moshe Rabbeinu a fiery coin, and Satan Kazay Yitnu, Hashem was saying to Moshe, not only do I want Klal Yisrael to contribute a Machzah Shekel, but it has to be a full half shekel. As we said before, it is the derech of coins to erode over time. Therefore, again, Rabbi Meir suggests that the din of kalbon is actually a din d'oraisa. Now, we'll say, this is incredible. How can you say kalbon is d'oraisa? It doesn't say it in the Torah. Oh, because what does the Torah say? What does the Torah say? A full machzas shekel. So if you have to give up a machzah shekel, by definition, the kolbon becomes a requirement. Also, just as an aside, the Sfas Emes, the Ger Rebbe says, why does the Gemara have to say that Hashem showed Moshe a fiery coin, a matbea shel eish? Right? What is it? He showed him a full coin. So the Sfas Emes says so beautifully, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu was telling Moshe not just what to give, but how to give. That when you give with his lavos. When you give with a fire. When you give with an excitement. That so much in Yiddishkeit is not just about what you do, but it's also about how you do it. We'll say one more line, then we'll stop. Lasson selo litol shekel, chayv shnei kolbonos. If you give a selah, so remember again, selah is 2 shekalim. So you give a selah, get back a shekel, you chayv 2 kolbonos. Amar Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Meir, to the Gemara says, Rabbi Meir, Amar Meir, Amar Echad Shekel, Shunosi, Echad Selah, Shunotel. The Sanya, Elu Chayavin Bekalbon. These are the individuals who are Chayavin Kalbon. Kalbon Echad. One Kalbon. Rabbi Meir, Amar Beis Kalbon. So we'll say, interesting enough, Rabbi Meir, remember, holds that Allah Chalamaisa, this is incredible. Only Jews can come up with such a system like this, where you get taxed on what you give, and you get taxed on the change you get back as well. Pretty incredible. So we'll say, so I'm going to get taxed on the selah that I'm giving, but I'm also going to get taxed ultimately again on what I'm giving back. So the Gemara says, Rav, Divrei HaKoli. So we'll say ultimately again that Rav is the Amar Rabbi Meir Echad Shekel Shunosin ve'Echad Shekel Shunotel ve'Echad LeDivrei Torah. So ultimately again, so we'll say halacha l'maisa, I have to pay the kolbon both on the half shekel that I pay, and I have to go ahead and pay a kolbon on the half shekel that I receive in change. Asra B'Yirmiyah Arba Sinot will stop over. We'll pick up a minute Hashem with Asra B'Yirmiyah. Actually, let's finish the 2 dots. Asra B'Yirmiyah, Rav Shmuel Barav Yitzchak B'Shem Rav Shlosha Kolbonos Inun. In fact, we'll say now we have an opinion that says that there are in fact 3 kolbonos. What are the 3 kolbonos? Echad shekel shu nosein. One is a kolbon based on the shekel that you give. Echad shekel shu notel. One is a kolbon on the shekel you get back. Ve'echad l'dvar Torah. And both say we're being introduced to, and we'll continue with this tomorrow, a new source of kolbon. And what's the new source of kolbon? Perhaps just a general kolbon tax. So a kolbon on the shekel you give, a kolbon on the shekel you get back, and then ultimately another tax, ultimately again on just the essence of machzas shekel. To be continued, Bosai. Shkoyach.